Okay, this is your 7th video lecture. This is Puritan New England. Going to cover 3 sections today: the Puritan migration, Puritanism and witchcraft, and a yeoman society. So let's get started. If Virginia was founded primarily as a capitalistic, money-making venture, New England was launched primarily to serve religious purposes. Other kinds of colonies would sooner or later appear in the region, but the stamp of Puritanism came first. The Puritans, or non-separatists, Puritans remained members of the Church of England or the Anglican Church. These people came to America to perfect Protestantism and the Reformation, a task they felt had been thwarted at home by the leaders of the Anglican Church. Most of their Calvinist theology had been worked out earlier in England. Puritans believed in predestination, that only a few, the elect, could expect God's redemption on Judgment Day. While Puritans thus did not believe that one could achieve salvation, they did maintain that God's grace was displayed in the life of an individual through his actions or his works, and the intensity of his belief or his faith. In many ways, then, Puritans looked both forward and backward. On the one hand, they believed, like their European predecessors, that all human institutions, the church, the state, the family, were ordained of God to keep order among the people and to keep them strong in the faith. Such obedience to the community's leaders was especially important because the Puritans saw themselves as fulfilling a great historical mission. In the course of years, the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the other New England colonies clustering around it grew and prospered thanks to the high birth rate, low mortality rates, and a hardworking and enterprising population. This relatively stable society was both anchored and held together by strong family bonds. Fortunately for historians, New Englanders were very good at keeping records, and their records provide fascinating glimpses into their public and private worlds. Okay, so let's then begin to look at the details of this section, starting with our first area, which is the Puritan migration. New England differed from other European settlements. It was settled by women and children as well as men. And it focused not on commerce, but on religion and morality. The Pilgrims, Puritans who were separatists from England's Anglican Church, sailed to America in 1620 on the Mayflower. They created, of course, the Mayflower Compact, which was a covenant for religious and political autonomy, and the first constitution in North America. The first winter in America tested the Pilgrims, as hunger and disease took a heavy toll, and it reduced the population by half. Thereafter, the Plymouth colony became a healthy and thriving community. After having Anglican rituals forced on their churches, Puritans sought refuge in America. In 1630, John Winthrop and 900 Puritans established the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Over the next decade, 10,000 Puritans migrated to Massachusetts Bay, along with 10,000 others who were fleeing hard times in England. The Puritans created representative political institutions that were locally based by transforming the initial joint stock corporation, the general court of shareholdings that Winthrop and his associates had utilized to organize and found the colony. The right to vote and hold office was limited to men who were church members, and the Bible was the legal as well as the spiritual guide for Massachusetts Bay. The Puritans eliminated the bishops that were in the Anglican Church, and they placed power in the hands of the laity. Influenced by John Calvin, they believed in predestination. The Puritans dealt with the uncertainties of divine election in 3 ways. A conversion experience, which was a born-again conviction of salvation. Something called preparation, which is confidence in redemption built on years of spiritual guidance. and also a belief in a covenant with God that promised salvation in exchange for obedience to God's laws. The Puritans of Massachusetts Bay felt that they must purge their society of religious dissidents. The Puritans then targeted a man named Roger Williams, who was a religious dissenter who agreed with the Pilgrims' separation of church and state. He was banned from Massachusetts Bay, along with his followers. And then they founded a settlement in Rhode Island, where there was no legally established church. Another one, Anne Hutchison, was considered a heretic because her beliefs diminished the role of Puritan ministers. The Puritans believed that when it came to governance of church and state, women were clearly inferior to men. The magistrates convicted and banished Anne Hutchinson and her family from the colony. In 1636, Thomas Hooker and others left Massachusetts Bay and they founded Hartford. In 1639, the Connecticut Puritans adopted something called the Fundamental Orders, which was a plan of government that included an established church, a popularly elected government, and an assembly, and voting rights for most property-owning men, not just church members. England then fell into a religious civil war between royalists and parliamentary forces in 1642, and thousands of English Puritans joined the revolt, demanding greater authority for Parliament and reform of the established church. After 4 years of civil war, parliamentary forces led by Oliver Cromwell were victorious, but the Puritan triumph was short-lived. With the failure of the English Revolution, Puritans looked to create a permanent society in America based on their faith and their ideals. Okay, so let's then move on to our next section, which is Puritanism and witchcraft. Puritans thought that the physical world was full of supernatural forces. Their respect for spiritual forces perpetuated certain pagan superstitions shared by nearly everyone, but condemned by zealous ministers. Between 1647 and 1662, Puritan civil authorities in Massachusetts and Connecticut hanged 14 people for witchcraft. In 1692, in Salem, Massachusetts, 175 people were arrested and 19 were hanged for witchcraft. Popular revulsion against the executions brought an end in New England to legal prosecutions for witchcraft and heresy. The European Enlightenment then helped to promote a more rational view of the world. Okay, so let's move on to our final section today, which is a yeoman society. We're looking at 1630 through 1700. Puritans instituted a fee-simple land distribution policy that encouraged the development of self-governing communities. All landowners had a voice in a town meeting. Consequently, ordinary New England farmers enjoyed far more political power than their European or Chesapeake counterparts. In organizing Puritan town governments, the general courts of Massachusetts Bay and of Connecticut bestowed the title to each township on a group of settlers or proprietors, who then bestowed the land among the male heads of families. Puritans believed in a social and economical hierarchy. The largest plots of land were given to men of high social status. As all male heads of families received some land, a society of independent yeoman farmers emerged. Town meetings chose selectmen, levied taxes, and enacted ordinances and regulations. As the number of towns increased, so did their power, enhancing local control. Nearly all New Englanders had an opportunity to acquire property. New England proved to many to be the promised land, a new world of opportunity. Okay, this does conclude video lecture number 7. Please address the review questions that you see at the bottom of the screen, like always, and continue on to the reading.